Todd B asking, with Borland, Werner, and Browning being thought starters, does Gant, Pope, Mitchell leave since we'll be juniors? Do you see them playing to a full year?
I don't really know where they're jumping, and we don't have the immediate transfer waiver at this point. So if you're sitting a year somewhere else, I mean, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another at that point. I really think that we'll see a little bit more of a rotation at linebacker at this point. I could see Browning getting more of a chance to be a kind of a stand-up, like an edge rusher type kind of hybrid guy out there. And I won't necessarily use the terminology that they use at school up north, but something like that type of position. I don't see any real reason why any of them jump at this point. I've had an opportunity to speak to them in the past. It's been a while since we've had the opportunity to talk to players. They're dying to get on the field at this point, but they're also waiting their turn. And you just need to kind of see it through, and I think that's kind of their mindset right now, to see it through.
Yeah, I'm with Kevin. There's no reason to leave now. Granted, Ohio State is usually pretty lenient on anything they could do to get immediate eligibility for the guys leaving. But, they are getting to play, and they will get you play more. Al Washington has said that. These guys are all pretty good. So they're all in the two deep, and they do get to play. But, they kind of knew the deal. Like, they could have transferred after after the 2018 season, because the depth chart really hasn't changed much. And, this is Ohio State. Sometimes you have to wait to play. Now, waiting till your senior year to start, that's rough. But you only need to start at Ohio State for 1 year to end up being a top 10 draft pick, something like that, or to be a first rounder, or to get drafted, and you don't know that you're going to end up somewhere better, or the situation will be ideal. You will be seen at Ohio State, whether you're playing 30 plays or 60 plays. I mean, look at Devon Hamilton. For so long was Robert Lander's backup, and then this past year just exploded past him, and he was the best nose tackle by a mile at Ohio State. Ends up being like a third-round draft pick. So, yeah, I don't agree with the no real playing time. I think they have played. I think they'll play some more this year, because they're talented enough to play, and they want to keep guys fresh. So I think they'll play more this year. But if they are going to leave, I mean, it has to pretty much be this month, because that's when it happens. It's after spring ball is normally ended, after April, and this is when guys leave, when they see the depth chart. But there's no depth chart right now because there's no spring ball.
Well, if our friend Jim Harbaugh, go ahead, Steve.
I didn't get the sense from any of those guys that we talked to. We did get to talk to some linebackers. I mostly dealt with Pope. I didn't get the sense that he's hopeless in the situation or planning to leave. And when you listen to Al Washington, we did a conference call with him about a week or two ago. He seemed almost steadfast in saying that those guys will play, as much as they've earned, and almost to the point of saying, okay, the guys in front of them are seniors and none of them are leaving. Here's a memo to them. Some of your playing time is going to go to some of those guys, whether you like it or not, because we need to play those guys for one reason, to have them ready for 2021. So I don't get the sense that anybody's leaving. I think that they're all, I wouldn't necessarily say they're happy with the status quo, but the seniors aren't leaving. They're going to play every meaningful snap, it seems. And the juniors have been told directly or indirectly that you will get X percentage of snaps if you earn them. So it's not black and white written down in stone. And I know Tony on the conference call asked Washington if he had a depth chart, and he said no, although, I don't buy that for a minute. It hasn't changed one bit. I mean, it's crazy. People didn't like what Tough Borland did last year in 2018, coming off the Achilles. People thought, oh, he's a step slow and he can't do this and he can't do that. Well, Bill Davis leaves, Greg Schiano leaves, Urban Meyer leaves, and they bring in Ryan Day as the head coach. I mean, he'd been there, but elevated from offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach to head coach. Then you have Washington take over as the linebackers coach, and you have Halfley and Madison are the coordinators on defense. And what a shock and surprise! Pete Werner and Tuff Borland are still playing. You cleaned house on the coaching staff. You had those guys who were sophomores at this point, Pope and Mitchell and Gant, those three guys. And the fans were like, hallelujah, the best players are finally going to play. Al Washington watched them through 15 spring practices, 25, 26 preseason practices, and said, yeah, the best players are Werner, Borland, and Malik Harrison, same as it ever was. New, fresh set of eyes. Watched them play 40 practices. And those guys didn't give a crap about the tape from 2018. I mean, I'm sure they watched it to see what was going on. And I'm sure somebody said, oh, yeah, it's Tuff Borland. Yeah, he coming off the Achilles. He was a step slow. Still the best we had. And lo and behold, crazy. New coaches saw it the same way the old coaches did. But that's nothing against Pope and Mitchell and Gant. And the other thing that you have to think about is, okay, linebacker play, linebacker play, linebacker play. The big plays that Clemson hit in the bowl game, the national semifinal game, were against 4-2-5 defense, where you had Browning and Harrison were the two linebackers. Borland and Werner were on the sideline. So the screens and the quarterback run were against the 4-2-5. And, the down and distance and the score dictated that Borland and Werner weren't on the field. So say what you will about it, but, people get up in arms. We'll play the best players. Well, I think in their mind they did.
And it was Baron Browning that couldn't catch Trevor Lawrence.
And to most people, best player means best athlete. People are enamored by 40 times. And yes, you need elite athleticism to win at the level Ohio State's expected to win at. There's no question about that. But best athlete doesn't always translate to best football player. I heard that comment from Bill Belichick. We all know it right here. The people with some guy I don't know is sort of the channels. I guess he's coached a few places. So yeah, it's obviously needed. It's required. But it's not necessarily, you can take a slightly lesser athlete, they can be a better football player, and depending on position as well, that factors into it as well. But people have been clamoring for Gant, Pope, and Mitchell. It's understandable based on what we saw in particular 2 years ago. I don't think there's any question that there was an upgrade in the linebacking core last year. Was it elite? Probably not, but there was an upgrade.
I would also say if you're looking for linebackers to leave, I think, and I don't like talking about transfers, but don't forget about Justin Hilliard, who is a graduate. And when we talked to him in the spring or even last year, there still had to be some discussions with him and Ryan Day on whether he would be back this year or whether his sixth year would take place at Ohio State. And, he's from Cincinnati, recruited by Luke Fickell. So there's maybe some possibility there, but we talked to him in the spring as well, and he had no intent. Didn't sound like he was going anywhere. But if you're looking for somebody who, go ahead.
Because I remember they're sitting one over right now without a decision on C.J. Saunders. Mm-hmm. So if they get C.J. Saunders, technically they're sitting two over the 85 scholarship limit at this point. So some decisions will need to be made on players. And as I say on my message board, I don't talk about potential transfers because you can't unring a bell. Mm-hmm. Once you associate a kid as a potential transfer, it just kind of sticks around his name and whatnot, and it really creates an awkward situation if it gets back to the kid that's like, well, I thought you said I was going to leave, and basically that's tantamount to saying that you didn't think I was good enough to play here. Yeah. So, I don't really ever mention names. I'm just saying some roster management still needs to happen. I just don't see it happening with the three linebackers that we started the discussion with.
Yeah, and as I was saying, when we talked to Hilliard in the spring, There was no indication that he was going anywhere. The only reason I bring it up is because there was he brought it up himself that, well, there still needs to be discussion. He brought it up himself, I think, at a bowl game maybe, that there still needs to be discussion on where the sixth year will be. Obviously, he was hoping it would be at Ohio State, and it seems like it's going to be.